My name is Margaret, I'm 68 years old, and for 45 years I truly believed I had raised an honest and respectful son. I never imagined that on Mother's Day of 2024, I would uncover the most shocking truth of my life. A truth that would make me question everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and love. Before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the Vintage Revenge Stories channel. We're building a community of amazing women who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now let's go back to the story. It all started on a sunny May morning. I was tidying up my small apartment in Phoenix, Arizona, when the doorbell rang. Standing there was my son David, 42 years old, alongside his wife Jennifer and my 8-year-old granddaughter Sophie. David was holding a small pink-wrapped package and wearing a strange smile, a smile I couldn't quite read. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom," he said, handing me the gift. Inside was a bottle of perfume from the brand I always wore. Simple, ordinary, nothing special. Jennifer stayed silent next to him, avoiding my eyes in a way that felt odd. Sophie ran into my arms, hugging me tightly the way she always did. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, trying to hide my slight disappointment. Not that I expected anything expensive, but after all these years, after everything I had done for him, a bottle of perfume, probably picked up at the drugstore down the street, felt disheartening. "We have to go now, Mom. We're having lunch with Jennifer's parents," David said quickly, already heading for the door. Something about his rush unsettled me. Normally, he would spend at least an hour with me on Mother's Day. I watched from the window as they got into a brand new car, a black BMW SUV I had never seen before. 3 days later, my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on my door with an expression that mixed excitement and concern. She was holding her tablet. "Margaret, you need to see this," she said, walking in without hesitation. I was scrolling through Facebook and came across a post from Jennifer. Look. My heart nearly stopped. On the screen was a photo of David, his mother-in-law, and Jennifer standing in front of a magnificent house. A white 2-story colonial with a flawless garden. The caption read, "Thank you to my wonderful husband for giving my mom her dream home this Mother's Day. She absolutely loved the gift. A $500,000 house just for her. We're so blessed." I read the post 3 times before my brain could even process it. A $500,000 house. For his mother-in-law? David had given me just a bottle of perfume. A cold chill spread through my stomach that I couldn't explain. "Mrs. Patterson, are you sure this post is about my son?" I asked with a trembling voice. "Margaret, it's David and Jennifer. No doubt about it. But, didn't you get a house?" In that moment, it felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. Why would Jennifer post something like that if it wasn't true? Could it be that David had bought a house for her mother while giving me only a cheap perfume? The humiliation was unbearable, but beneath it I felt something else. A gnawing sense that there was more to this story. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying everything in my mind. David had always been a good son, but in recent months he had grown distant. His visits became rare, and when he did come he seemed anxious, constantly checking his phone. I began connecting dots I should have noticed earlier. The next day I decided to call David. My hand shook as I dialed his number. "Hi Mom, how are you?" he answered, but his voice sounded forced. "David, I saw on Facebook that you bought a house for Jennifer's mother. Is that true?" There was a silence far too long. "Mom, you saw that on Facebook?" "Yes, Jennifer posted it." "David, I need to know. Did you really buy a $500,000 house for her?" "Mom, it's complicated. Can we talk about this later?" "No, David. We'll talk now. I'm your mother." Another silence. Then he sighed. His mom. "I bought a house for Dolores." It felt like a punch to my stomach. Dolores was Jennifer's mother. A woman who had always treated me with cold disdain, as if I wasn't good enough to even be in the same room. "David, how did you get $500,000? You work in sales, Jennifer is a teacher. Where did this money come from?" "Mom, I've made some good investments over the past few years. Got lucky with some stocks. But I knew my son." I could hear the lie in his voice. David had never been good with money. In fact, he was often the one asking me for loans whenever things got tight. "David, I want you to come here tomorrow. We need to talk face to face." "Mom, I'm really busy this week." "I'm not asking, David. I'm demanding." When I hung up, my hands were trembling. Something was very, very wrong. I knew I had to investigate on my own. The next morning, I drove to the bank where I had kept my savings account for over 20 years. That account held my life savings. Money I had put away from decades of working as a nurse, living simply, denying myself small luxuries so I could feel secure in my old age. I had accumulated $520,000 over the years. "I'd like to check the balance of my savings account," I told the teller. "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. Let me pull it up, here it is. Your current balance is $47. The world spun around me. That has to be wrong. I had more than $500,000 in that account." The young teller frowned and typed again. "Ma'am, I see here that there were several large withdrawals over the last 6 months. All authorized with your digital signature." "Digital signature? I never made any withdrawals." "Let me get the manager," the teller said, clearly uneasy. The branch manager, Mr. Williams, a middle-aged man who had known me for years, came out of his office with a concerned look. "Mrs. Thompson, what seems to be the problem?" "My money is gone, Mr. Williams. Over $500,000. He led me into his office and began reviewing my account on the computer. "Mrs. Thompson, I see here that you granted financial power of attorney to your son David 8 months ago. He has full authorization to move money from your account." The blood in my veins turned to ice. I never gave power of attorney to anyone. "But here is the document signed by you and notarized." He turned the computer screen toward me. There was my signature, or at least something that looked very much like it. But I knew I had never signed that document. "I need copies of everything," I said, trying to keep my composure. "Every statement, every transaction, every document related to this power of attorney." I drove home in a state of shock. My own son, the little boy I had raised alone after my husband abandoned us when David was only 3 years old, the young man for whom I worked double shifts at the hospital just to pay for his college education, the man who always called me his hero, had robbed me. Not only robbed me but forged my signature to do it legally. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table and spread out all the bank documents. The transactions told a clear story. Over 6 months, David had been withdrawing my money in chunks. Always large amounts, but never so large as to trigger immediate suspicion. The last withdrawal was for $75,000, just 1 week before Mother's Day. Suddenly everything made sense. The $500,000 house for Dolores. The new car. His rush to leave my apartment on Mother's Day. He didn't want to stay long because he knew I would eventually find out. But something else gnawed at me. If David had stolen my money to impress his wife's family, why give me only a cheap bottle of perfume? It felt deliberate, as if he wanted to humiliate me. Or worse, maybe he didn't want me to suspect that he had access to a fortune. The following night, still struggling to process everything, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from my insurance company. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Patricia from Mutual Life Insurance. I'm calling about some recent changes to your life insurance policy." "What changes?" "I haven't made any changes." "Well, according to our records, you updated your primary beneficiary from David Thompson to David Thompson and Jennifer Thompson as co-beneficiaries, and you also added an accelerated death benefit clause in case of a terminal illness." My blood froze. "I never made those changes." "Mrs. Thompson, the changes were made through your legal power of attorney. Your son David submitted all the required documents 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. Right after he had drained my bank account. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. "What kind of accelerated death benefit?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. "If you were diagnosed with a terminal illness, the insurance payout could be collected before your passing. It's fairly common these days for elderly clients who want to use the funds for medical treatment." "And how much is my policy worth?" $750,000, Mrs. Thompson." I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my living room, numb. This wasn't just theft anymore. David was planning something far worse. The puzzle pieces were falling into place in the most terrifying way. He had stolen my savings, forged legal documents, and now he had positioned himself to access my life insurance. That night I barely slept. My mind raced with horrible possibilities. Was David planning to hurt me? Was he waiting for me to die so he could cash out the policy? The thought seemed absurd. This was my son, the child I had raised. But the evidence was piling up in a way I couldn't ignore. The next morning, I did something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator. I found James Morrison through an online search, a retired police officer with excellent reviews. Mrs. Thompson, he said in his modest downtown Phoenix office, tell me everything from the beginning. I spent 2 hours recounting the entire story. James took detailed notes and asked precise questions. When I finally finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. The first thing you need to do is immediately revoke any and all powers of attorney. Second, we're going to investigate your son. If he forged your signature, that's a federal crime. And if he's trying to commit insurance fraud, well, that's even more serious. Do you think he would actually harm me? James looked at me with compassion. Mrs. Thompson, people do terrible things for money. Even to their own families. I don't want to frighten you, but you need to be very cautious. Over the following days, I revoked every power of attorney and changed all my bank passwords. I also installed security cameras around my home and started keeping a log of everything. Every call, every visit, every strange interaction. David tried calling me several times, but I didn't answer. Finally, one Thursday evening, he showed up at my door. When I saw him through the peephole, I felt something I never thought I would feel at the sight of my own son. Fear. Mom, please open the door. We need to talk, he said from the other side. David, I don't want to talk to you right now. Mom, I know you're upset with me. Let me explain. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, but kept the security chain in place. You have 5 minutes. He looked different, thinner with dark circles under his eyes. Mom, I made a terrible mistake. I took money from your account, but I was going to pay it back. I swear I was. David, you stole more than $500,000 from me. How could you possibly pay that back? I had an investment plan. I was going to double the money and give it all back with interest. But things went wrong and... You forged my signature, David. That's a crime. His expression shifted. For a moment I saw something in his eyes that chilled me, cold anger. Mom, you're not going to call the police. I'm your only son. Your only family. You also changed my life insurance policy. That was just a precaution. In case something happened to you, I wanted to make sure Jennifer and Sophie would be taken care of. What kind of precaution, David? Are you planning to hurt me? He laughed, but it was hollow. Mom, you're being paranoid. I would never hurt you. But the way he said it only made me more afraid. As soon as he left, I called James Morrison immediately. He was here. James, I'm scared of him. Mrs. Thompson, you did the right thing by keeping the chain on the door. Listen, I've discovered some things about your son that you need to know. Can we meet tomorrow? The next day, James showed me a file full of documents he had gathered. Mrs. Thompson, your son is in serious financial trouble. He owes more than $200,000 in credit card debt and has a $300,000 loan that comes due next month. Worse still, he owes money to some very dangerous people. What kind of dangerous people? Loan sharks, Mrs. Thompson. The kind who break legs when they're not paid. My world crumbled a little more. So he stole my money to pay off debts? Partially. But he also used some of the money to buy that house for his mother-in-law and to make other expensive purchases. It looks like he was trying to keep up appearances while juggling his financial problems. James opened another folder. But here's the really troubling part. I looked into the change he made to your life insurance policy. The accelerated payout clause he added can be triggered with just 2 medical evaluations confirming a terminal illness. And guess what? He scheduled you an appointment with a doctor who has a very questionable history. I felt like I was falling into an abyss. He wants me to be diagnosed with a terminal illness? It's possible. There are corrupt doctors who will falsify diagnoses for money. If you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, he can collect the life insurance payout while you're still alive. And then... James didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood perfectly. If David got his hands on the insurance money while I was still alive enough to expose the fraud, I would become a problem that needed to be taken care of. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. First, you do not go to that medical appointment. Second, we go to the police. We already have enough evidence of fraud, forgery, and possibly conspiracy to commit murder. That afternoon, I sat at the police station telling my story to Detective Rodriguez. He listened carefully as I explained everything. The stolen money, the forged documents, the changes to the life insurance policy. Mrs. Thompson, this is very serious. We're opening an immediate investigation. But I have to warn you, Your son may try to accelerate his plans once he realizes we're looking into him. What does that mean? It means you may be in real danger. We'll arrange police protection and I suggest you stay with friends or relatives for a few days. But I had no close relatives other than David and only a few trusted friends. I decided to stay at home with police protection, making sure I was never left alone. 2 days later, David showed up again. This time he didn't knock on the door, he used a key he had apparently copied years ago. He entered my house at 2 in the morning. Luckily, the officer on duty saw him and intercepted him before he reached my bedroom. He had this on him, the officer said, showing me a syringe. We'll send it for analysis, but I doubt it's vitamin B12. At that moment, I fully accepted the horrifying reality. My son, the boy I had raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for, was planning to kill me for my life insurance money. David was arrested and charged with multiple crimes: fraud, forgery, attempted murder, and conspiracy. During the trial, I learned even more dreadful details about his plan. The prosecutor revealed that David had been researching online about natural deaths and how to make someone appear to have died of natural causes. He had also purchased large quantities of insulin, enough to induce a fatal hypoglycemic shock in someone who wasn't diabetic. Jennifer testified against him in exchange for immunity. It turned out she had known about some aspects of the plan, though she claimed she didn't know about the attempted murder. She admitted she was aware that the money for her mother's house had been stolen from me, but said David had promised he would make it right eventually. During his own testimony, David finally confessed to everything. He said he was desperate, that the people he owed money to had threatened to hurt Jennifer and Sophie if he didn't pay. He said he thought that if I died naturally, no one would suspect anything and he could use the money to pay off his debts and start over. I didn't want to hurt my mother, he cried in court. I couldn't see another way out. But his tears didn't change the fact that he had meticulously planned my death. This wasn't a crime of passion or a desperate split-second decision. It was a cold, calculated plan that had unfolded over months. David was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Jennifer lost custody of Sophie, who now lives with her paternal grandparents in another state. The house David had bought for Dolores was seized to help pay restitution. As for my money, I managed to recover only a small portion through legal action. The rest had been spent or lost in reckless investments David made in a desperate attempt to multiply the stolen funds. Today, nearly a year later, I'm still trying to rebuild my life. I moved to a new house. I could no longer bear to live in the place where my own son had planned to kill me. I go to therapy twice a week to cope with the trauma and betrayal. The hardest part isn't the financial loss, though that was devastating. The hardest part is accepting that the son I raised, loved unconditionally, and considered my greatest pride in life, was capable of betraying me so completely. He was capable of planning my death for money. Sometimes I wonder where I went wrong as a mother. Did I spoil David too much? Did I fail to teach him enough about morality? Were there signs I ignored over the years? My therapist tells me it's not my fault, that David made his own choices as an adult. But as a mother, it's impossible not to feel like I failed in some deep, fundamental way. David writes to me from prison. Long letters begging for forgiveness, telling me he loves me, that he was desperate and made a terrible mistake. He pleads for me to visit, says he's getting psychological help and has become a different person now. I don't answer his letters. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him. How do you forgive someone who plotted your death? How do you continue to love someone who saw you only as an obstacle between him and money? Sophie, my granddaughter, calls me from time to time. She's 9 years old now and doesn't fully understand why her father is in prison. Her grandparents on her father's side allow me to talk to her, and those conversations are both a blessing and a painful reminder of everything I've lost. Some nights when I'm alone in my new house, I think about that Mother's Day. If I had known that cheap bottle of perfume would be the last gift my son gave me out of genuine love, if he even still felt genuine love for me at that point, I would have cherished it so much more. But then I remember, it wasn't given out of love. It was given out of guilt, or maybe as a cruel irony. While he was planning my death, he gave me a gift that cost less than $20, after he had stolen more than $500,000 from me. Trust, once broken so completely, may never be fully restored. Now I'm cautious with everyone, questioning motives, looking for signs of dishonesty, never giving my trust blindly again. Some might say that's sad, that I've become a cynical, suspicious person. But I would say I've become a survivor. I've learned the hard way that even the people closest to us are capable of unimaginable betrayal. My hope in sharing this story is that others may stay alert to the signs I missed. If your adult child suddenly gains access to large sums of money without a clear explanation, question it. If someone close to you suggests changes to important financial documents, investigate. Something feels off, it probably is. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself even from those you love most. And remember, sometimes the greatest dangers come from those who are supposed to protect us. As for David, he's serving his sentence in an Arizona state prison. In my weakest moments, I miss the son I thought I had. But then I remember the syringe he brought into my home that night, and I realize that son may never have truly existed. They say a mother's love should be unconditional. But I've discovered that even maternal love has its limits. And planning the murder of one's own mother for money is definitely beyond those limits. This is my story, a story of family betrayal, greed, and survival. A story I hope no other mother ever has to live through, but sadly I know there are others who already have or will. In the end, I can only be grateful to be alive to tell this story. If David had carried out his plans, I would have been just another statistic. A senior woman who died of natural causes, while her son inherited a large life insurance payout. But I survived. And now, at 69 years old, I'm learning to live again. More cautious, wiser, but still alive to fight another day. Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. And if this story made you reflect, like the video and subscribe to the channel to follow more real and intense stories like this. Because in the end, every story is an opportunity to see life with new eyes.